So you're just archiving this, you're not...
As far as I'm aware, yeah. Put it up, yeah.
No, that's fantastic.
Hello, I'm Ian Downs, I'm from Celador Radio, and I am like your sort of flight attendant tonight. So we're going to kick off at exactly 5 minutes past 7. Hands up if you've ever had to do a clock start. Hands up if you've ever had to do a clock start. We're doing a clock start tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to be streaming live on In Radio, which is the industry's own radio station. So no pressure on me. Paulina's going to host, and we have a fantastic panel. So if you want to grab a drink from your drinks voucher, as I say, you've got about 10 minutes to do so. We are going live at 5 minutes past 7. So you need to be in fine voice. We need to practice applause a little bit later and have some great questions for our cracking panel. Okay, so clock start at 5 minutes past 7, everybody. Thank you. This is going to be the longest 3 minutes of my life, isn't it? So Paul, Andrew and I were just chatting now about one of the most important parts of this evening is to be able to network and say hello to people. I've already got 4 demo tapes on a USB stick. Thanks very much for that. Whatever you're doing tonight, make sure that you're enjoying yourself and saying hello. If you're stood in the corner and you want to say hello to someone, tonight's the night to do it. Just have the balls to go over and say hello. So Paulina's going to host. Paulina has been on the radio in the West. Paulina's a very attractive lady over here, by the way. Paulina has been on the radio here in the West Country for 14 years. Started off at the BBC in Wiltshire and has been on the show here in Bristol with Bush and Troy and to start with, and then of course Ed joined us. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome your host for this evening, Paulina Gillespie from Heart Breakfast.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. I thought for a minute you were going to say you've been on radio 40 years. It kind of feels like it, a little bit. Anyway, listen, welcome to tonight. I'm really, really excited to be here. This is the relaunch of the Radio Academy, Best in the West. Lots of you guys have signed up, which is amazing. Tonight's all about celebrating radio. It's all about education, information, opportunities, all that kind of stuff. You may already be in media, but maybe just want to take a different direction. You may just want a little bit more education. Since Nick and I have been talking...
We're going to have to cut across you, because we've got to do our clock start, remember?
Oh, brilliant.
Sorry.
That's like being on the actual show at work.
Sorry. I'm just playing the George Painter role. Here we go. Right, silence everybody. Sexy. Live across the UK, stand by. Feel like Dr. Fox? Or I don't actually. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Radio Academy in the West for our event, Made in the West. Your host for this evening, please welcome, from Heart Breakfast, Paulina Gillespie.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to actually have a live audience. Well, not that ours aren't listening live, but you know what I mean. Anyway, it's nice to be here. It's so cool that so many people of you have been here. Tonight, as I just said a little bit earlier, is about education, information, opportunities. We've got an amazing panel. I'm going to explain about those in a moment. So do listen, do enjoy, do learn some stuff if you can. You may already be in media, want to change direction. You might actually just want to get into media, or you know, you might just want a little bit more education. I was talking earlier in the week with Nick, the guy that runs this, and I've learned a lot, and I've been in radio for about 15, 16 years, and I was learning stuff just this week. So it's going to be great fun. I'm going to introduce just in a moment the panel. After that, we're going to pretty much ask some questions. I'm going to ask some questions, then I'm going to open it to you guys. So have a little think when you're listening to the guys on the panel, what you want to say to them, who you'd like to ask the questions, and also make sure that it's a question and not some sort of statement so that we can kind of get to it quite quickly. So, as I said, welcome. Now we're going to start off with Claire. Claire McGinn. Tell us a little bit about yourself, honey.
Nobody's ever called me honey, but there you go.
It's always a first.
I've been the head of network radio here for 12, 13 years now, so I've been responsible. Primarily we make Radio 4 stuff, we also do Radio 3, we do some world service. The team has expanded significantly over those years, and we do everything from poetry, documentaries, rural affairs, food. We do an awful lot, documentaries, arts. I've got 2 of my editors up there, and I think in relation to what we're talking about today, digital, in the 12 years that I've been here, digital has really changed, not just the way we make radio, it's the sound of radio, it's the way we interact with our audience, creatively the things we're doing, and what I want to talk about tonight is creatively how it's making a difference for us. I would have said probably about 7 or 8 years ago, people would have thought Radio 4 was not for them. It's all a bit stuffy, it's my granny's radio station, it's an anorak radio station. That perception is changing a lot. And I think you'll see, if you look at the Radio 4 website, look at Radio 4 Twitter feeds, Facebook, things are really changing. The clip that I want to show you, and I'm going to just pick up on the back of it, is a good illustration. We made a 60-part series here called The History of Ideas, and it was about philosophy. And the radio programs were great, but what was interesting about it was that Radio 4 also commissioned animations to go with it. And the animations, there were some clever devices. So Harry Shearer, who some of you will know from The Simpsons and Spinal Tap, voiced the first lot of them. Then we got Gillian Anderson to voice more. Then we got Adrian Turner from Poldark to voice more, and Stephen Fry. All of those people, I think apart from Adrian Turner, but I think he's mainly known for taking his shirt off, have an international reputation. And the podcast, they went onto the podcast charts, and it's been really interesting to see, even after the radio series has stopped, that people are still downloading the animations. So we're going to show one now, so if I can get that teed up. Yeah, and One Direction are in it as well.
Sigmund Freud acknowledged that
What's interesting about that is that, you know, there wouldn't have been a time years ago where we would have worked with animators. You know, that's effectively a radio script. We worked, I mean, it was Andrew Park and Cognitive is the company that did it, and we did get money from the Open University to pay for those. But what it's done is it's given that the radio series as well a new lease of life. So we're no longer making a program that goes out once and that's it. These programs constantly regenerate, and I think it's starting to really change the way we make programs and think about programs. I mentioned sound as well. We've been so influenced by podcasts. If you think back in 2004, the BBC were the first people in this country just to start to play with podcasts. So in our time, which was a very weighty and heavy thing to do, Fighting Talk, and then I think there was one extra program that has now gone. With the 3 programs they tried, in 4 weeks, 270,000 people downloaded those. Now we've got, I think it's 3 billion people or something are downloading these in a year in the UK. And the whole podcast sensibility, how a podcast sounds, it's rougher, it's redder, it's more spontaneous, it's younger. We're starting to make our programs, and in fact we have been doing that. We changed, the sensibility has changed, it's got less stuffy, there's more humour in things, we make things rough around the edges. It's to make it exciting, and I think what's interesting for us is we're getting direct interaction through Twitter, through Facebook, from people who are listening to our programs and liking them, and we can start to see a difference with listeners, with what they'll like and what they don't. So we make a series called Recycled Radio, which takes bits of old radio, mixes them up and produces a completely new program, and we pick themes, and it's satirical, it's quite edgy. Traditional Radio 4 listeners, a lot of them don't like it, but we're getting a whole load of new listeners who really, really love it, and are, you know, they want more. And I think that thing where you're starting to see a divide between people who want something different, and it's because the digital world and that interaction with our audience is allowing us to do that, and people who had linear radio, that is a comfort to them, but it's basically passive. And I think with this, I mean, I'm sure we'll pick up on this, things are changing for us completely. Radio is now about being interactive, it's about enabling people, it's about creating content that is findable. So we're thinking all the time about taking pictures, making videos, Vine, Instagram, all of those things are part of the things we discuss now. So I would say, you know, we're only starting, this is going to get bigger, and I think that the influence also from podcasts that are coming, you know, I think most people who love radio have heard Serial, but you know, This American Life, a lot of podcasts that are coming from the States are really influencing the way we're making things as well. So things are changing, and they're changing very quickly, and I think that's also changing the way we think about radio. Radio is multi-platform, it's not just something that you listen to.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Claire, brilliant. James, you've got to follow that. All right, James Dodd, Group Head of Imaging and Production for Celador Radio. Good evening.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell us a little about yourself and what you're going to show us this evening.
So I've been working in imaging and production for many years. I started off way after university, way back when, at Radio Mercury down in Crawley. I worked at Red Dragon in Cardiff. I was 4 or 5 years in London at Capitol. And then I went to the BBC and changed completely and worked in creative marketing, making radio promos for TV shows. Which was a completely different mindset, and then found myself working for Celador back in 2012, working on production and imaging, which is where I sort of always ended up. I like writing and I like making things, which it's nothing makes me happier than sort of sitting and having that sort of ability just to do something, write something, edit voiced, and put it on air pretty quickly. What I wanted to bring tonight was a couple of things. For Celador, we've got 3 different radio brands that all do different types of things. So we have The Breeze, which is a music network, an NAC music network that has lots of small stations across the country that run as a network, and we have to make them sound local whilst running in a sort of network sense. And then we have Fire, which is a tiny station down in Bournemouth and Poole, which essentially is a sort of a dance CHR hot station. So we have to program that and produce that very smartly with small resources. And then our sort of big other brand is Sam FM, and Sam FM equally has a challenge because it's a radio station that has a live breakfast show and a live drive time show, but the rest of the time there are no presenters. There's no presenters voicing links even. It is music and production, because it's about the personality of the radio station. The station voice has that personality, and so we have to find ways of being topical, and we have to find ways of being able to react to things when we're not necessarily on air as well. So I wanted to show just a couple of slides, or this slide here, in fact. So we'll, whilst we may run a line, so the line's on the screen. If we decide to leave Europe, please can we go somewhere warm like Australia? Now, something like that. We don't visualize a lot of these, but we will probably 3 or 4 times a week, maybe a bit more, create something like this with one of the lines that we run, just because it allows us to share that in different ways. Now, this was from Sam FM on the South Coast. It reached 16,500 people. Lots of likes and loves and things like that as well. But it's more just a way of being able to be topical when we may not have a presenter, to talk about it. We had another one where we posted when Ronnie Corbett died, and it was a very simple one. It was just his glasses and Ronnie Corbett, 1930-2016, but it linked to a page of his best jokes, and again that had really good traction. But then equally on air we have to sort of use topicality and personality in different ways. I wanted to play a montage. It's got 3 pieces of audio in it. So we have something that runs through the day, which is called Quiz Time, which is just very simple, really simple. You ask a quiz question, and then 20 minutes later you get the answer. Very much like how the Big Breakfast used to do it with don't phone, it's just for fun. Things like that. But again, we haven't got anyone on air, so it builds a bit of personality. We have and that's sort of accompanied by a very quirky jingle as well, which is quite memorable, and people sing along to it. So that's old-fashioned radio thing, get people to remember these things. Then we have a feature that runs occasionally during the day, because we're a station that sort of is rooted in sort of 70s, 80s, 90s. People will have grown up in the 70s and 80s, so they will have a memory of TV shows from when they grew up as well. So we've had various features. We had a feature called Does Johnny Ball Know It All?, where we had Johnny Ball, the old TV presenter. He set science questions, or sort of weird sort of things like that. And then we have one that we run at the moment, which is the Peter Purvis Advice Service, which is brilliant. It's essentially Viz Top Tips rewritten, or advice like that. But just because of who he is, if you know who he is, it's funny and a bit quirky, because where else would you hear him doing that? And if you don't, it's just a bit of entertainment. And finally, it's the voice itself. The voice of the station is very much a sort of character who sort of is a little bit befuddled, doesn't really care. The whole Sam FM ethos is not F you, it's F it. You know, so we're not really that bothered, you know, and it's a little bit half-assed. So I just wanted to play this montage, which sort of shows that how half-assed we can be.
It's a quiz time, quizzy quiz time, Southern quiz time now.
Earlier we asked what is automatically given to everyone who appears on Desert Island Discs. The answer is the complete works of Shakespeare, not the Bible, as that is dependent on religion.
Southern quiz time now. Peter Purvis advice service, sticky bag plastic gas part 2. Peter Purvis on the air, here's one he prepared for you. Peter Purvis advice service, listen close now, it's a gem. Peter Purvis advice service on Sam FM.
I'm Peter Purvis, and I made this advice specially for you from some toilet rolls and sticky back plastic. Here's how to reduce the queue for a cash machine. If you're behind someone, let them know you're not a threat by gently kissing their neck. That should do the trick.
Peter Purvis advice service on Sam FM. Downsy, Alice and Simon.
Downsy has way more baseball caps than is necessary. Alice has been obsessed with traffic since she was a small child. And Simon, incredibly, isn't single. Together, they are That Morning Thing on Bristol's 106 Sam FM.
Perfect.
So yeah, we don't take ourselves too seriously. I think that's
That's
what's
good.
it.
I'm not supposed to like that because we're on the other station, but actually I quite like that. That was quite good. Maybe we can talk later. All right, thank you so much for that. That was James. Maybe a drink or two. All right, up next we've got Faye Lenham and Patrick Thomas from Burst Radio. First of all, tell us what Burst means.
It's an acronym, isn't it? Bristol University Radio Station.
There you go.
T. And
Actually, incidentally, our my co-presenter Paris Troy made up that name. He's the
Yes,
one that
he
did.
did.
Yeah,
He,
he
he
did.
found
He's told me
it.
that all morning. He's not shut up about
Has he?
it. Anyway,
Um,
tell us about yourselves and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're kind of the university radio station. So we're going for kind of a different demographic in that we're kind of aimed at obviously students and the students at Bristol University. And we've got a committee of 20 people we have got about 200 people who are part of Burst, presenters and producers, and then they're on the music team, the news team, the production team, the commercial team, and this is all kind of overseen by the station manager. Now, up until basically today, the station manager was Faye,
Me.
who you can see there in her Bristol-y St Nick's Market 6 Music situation, and then as of today, station manager is me, there, windswept at the bridge, being very Bristol. And we kind of push these 200, we don't push them, we've got 200 people, students, who want to make radio, and they just make the best kind of diverse stuff. Because with student radio, there's no adverts, there's no restrictions. You can say what you want within reason, you can play what you want, and the stuff we hear, I love it. So you get, PhD students who have like debating shows, and then first years who've been at uni for a week, who come on and go, I want to do a drum and bass show and play all my favourite drum and bass, So yeah, exactly. So there's a bit of everything. I do a show. I've done a show for 2 years. I do it with 2 of my best friends, and we have an hour a week to just have fun in the studio, and we love it. But then aside from that, we also do loads of kind of stuff within the uni. So in association with the newly refurbished Students' Union, we have a weekly Burst Presents DJ night where DJs get to play in the union, they get an audience, and they get to use the best equipment ever. But the SU get a night residency, so it's kind of a relationship we've built up with them. What else do we do? We cover the big university events. So we've had outside broadcasts at Freshers Fair, at the Reclaim the Night March, at Varsity Week we played UE, and also at the Student Union elections, which are a huge event in the student calendar, although it may not sound very exciting, really is quite exciting. And the union said to us, could you make something to get students involved with this? So we made a podcast, 15-minute podcast, that I think we're going to play reasonably soon, where we interviewed all of the candidates and condensed it down into this 15-minute podcast. We're not going to play the whole podcast now. And yeah, the votes went up. It was the most votes the Student Union elections ever had because so many interacted with our podcast. and actually got to hear the manifestos instead of trawling through loads of really quite dull stuff about, you know, study spaces and stuff.
So Faye, has he left anything for you to say, or has he done it all?
Well, I'm
It's a bit
going to talk to you
a bit like
about
the Heart Show.
No, I really want to talk about social media. So we're a bit fed up of people saying, "Oh, you have a student radio station at Bristol, we've never even heard of it." So when I took on the committee, I thought, what better way to begin other than launching us on a brand new platform, which is Instagram. So we launched Burstagram. One thing we really like is how the BBC are pushing, kind of like you were saying, visualising radio. And as you can see behind me, I mean, we're visualising everything we're doing. We're at Varsity, we're at conferences, we're running campaigns. We've got competitions, we're just chilling in Bristol, we're doing everything. And the best thing about Instagram as well is you have this kind of mutual promotion. So for example, when we were doing Varsity, we'd take a picture of the commentators, we'd tag the rugby team, and then the rugby team would then repost it, and on that repost there would be a link straight back to, you know, Burst, where people can listen in. We've also been launching some kind of like social media campaigns. One's called Burst Booth, I don't know if there's any, yeah, here we go. So it was more about making our outside broadcast more visual. This would tie in with our Facebook page, so essentially it's kind of like a roaming photo booth, yeah, where we'd photograph people with their track of the week for Freshers' Fair. It kind of killed three birds with one stone, so you know, it built a lot of hype towards our launch date. We got to speak to hundreds of students about you know, why you should join. And it was such a good way to kind of get everyone involved. We did a song that empowers me at Reclaim the Night. We did my victory song at Varsity. You know, it was really good, and it gets everyone back to our Facebook page where we can then sort of direct everyone to our content. I mean, a big thing that comes up on my newsfeed as a student is sort of the Humans of Bristol, the Humans of New York, and what's the other one? Students of Bristol. And it's kind of taking a picture, it has a story. People can read it and then listen to someone's show. So, yeah, we're going to show you now just a 2-minute clip from our elections. This was probably one of our favourite pieces that we've done. The union gave us a really big brief. We had to make sure it wasn't biased. We had to interview everyone fairly, and we had 2 people running from our radio station, so we couldn't favour them in any way as much as we wanted to. But, yeah.
And to get students involved with student democracy and kind of doing that, and pushing it on our social medias was kind of a win-win for everyone, really.
Yeah, we're really happy because student democracy, like, it was the most amount of people voted this year, and we actually felt like we had something to do with that, because instead of people kind of not being bothered, they could just listen to that podcast, see who they wanted to vote for, and then just vote. It was so much easier.
I'm loving your enthusiasm. That's really good. Thank you so much for that. Right, we're going to move to Dom. Are you all right? All good?
All
Tell us
good,
a little bit about yourself and what you brought here for us this evening.
Okay, hello, I'm Dom Chambers, and I run Summer Valley FM, which I have been doing since 2008. Also involved in the kind of national agenda for community radio. I chaired the Community Media Association, which is the national representative body, and I left that quite recently in order to focus on developing the Community Radio Foundation. And I'd like to, fantastic use of audio, by the way. I really like the way of including that in election to our student friends here, but it's Claire's closing words I'd like to pick up on. Slightly different context, but this is all very new and it can only get bigger. Well, that absolutely applies to the community radio sector, because if we were having this event 10 years ago, I think our student friends would have been here, certainly the BBC, certainly the commercial networks, and the hospital radio as well, but the community sector didn't really exist then, and it is arrived, and there's still the new kids on the block. The BBC, very nearly 100 years old, I think. Commercial radio, around about 45 years old, very nearly anyway, in the country. Community radio, 10 years and under. Just focusing on the national scene for a second, there are currently, right now, broadcasting in the UK, 238 licenses, but as of today, this is great news, there are 5 new licenses been announced by Ofcom, and that is for the Southeast. There's a further 17 applications in the Southeast. So this is the big growth sector of radio, and it will only continue to get bigger. If I have anything to do with it, my whole approach is collaborative, We work well with BBC Bristol and BBC Somerset, and always have interesting and good conversations with our friends in the commercial sector, as I was with Paul Andrews over there, smiling right now, so that's good. We are the principal training ground, or at least one of them with our student friends, for radio, the professional networks. And that is why it is so important that we do talk to other people. What is the foundation about? It's really about upping the game of the sector. This sector is both succeeding and failing all at the same time. It is succeeding because we are getting more licenses. More people are listening to community radio, and more people are participating in it, with volunteer counts now estimated, I would say, right up into 1 million thereabouts. And so it is thriving, it is arriving, it is growing, and yet, when you look at the Ofcom Communications and Marketing Report that generally comes out in August, you will see that the average turnover of a community radio station has fallen by £20,000 from 74 to 54 in the year 2014. It's stabilised in 2015, but this is not good. 54,000 or now £55,000 as the last given average of turnover is really not a lot of money. So through that, we have identified a need for a charity to help facilitate this sector. It's got a great representational organisation. It's got a number actually, and hopefully bringing the Radio Academy more into that as well. But the Community Media Association is a fantastic representational body, but there is a need identified for a charity, and that is about helping, working with those other organisations, but helping raising the skills in our sector, and not least to help the skills of running a charity or running a social enterprise, because our sector is attracting a lot of people who love their radio, love their communities, want to work with young people, want to work with people who are in some ways disadvantaged, but we're perhaps not getting as many people as we would like into how to run those businesses. If we can get the skills up doing that, I think it's going to make much better use of the funding that is out there. So that is the principal purpose of the charity, and we hope as it develops its capacity, we will work with the government. And Pauline, I can see you're just absolutely itching to get me onto the clip I brought in.
Yes, could you move on? Well done. That's fine, we're just running a bit short on time.
Okay, no problem. I did send in 3 clips, one of which typifies the kind of whole area of community radio, which is about empowering voices, not heard or less heard on other networks. However, we're not going to play that one. I also sent in a clip about a social agenda around our sports show. This is on Summer Valley FM, which has done a marvellous thing of bringing all the local sports clubs together, and that demonstrates, again, not just about what we can do as a radio station for audiences, but it's about the social ethic that lies behind it. All of which is fine and dandy and highly worthy. But I just want to play this clip because actually it's quite fun.
I'm about rhythm, baby. I'm about keeping with the rhythm. I'm about getting down with the young people and keeping myself moving, man. Because if you don't move, you lose it, you know. And use it or lose it.
You've been out.
I'm talking in a stupid American accent.
You've been out.
I'm Midsummer Norton. I'm Midsummer Norton. So here we are dancing in the town hall, and we're all getting down with it, and everybody's wiggling about. Even the old people are coming in and wiggling about. It's lovely.
John, you've been out on the high street. How have people been engaging with you?
Well, they've been rather difficult, actually. They've been rather distant in their motor cars, but I've been trying to persuade them to step up this way and wiggle their bits a little bit, if you know what I mean, all in the aid of charity.
Perfect.
I was just in the studio. By the way, the guy who couldn't get the word in edgeways is Luke. He's over there and he's on camera tonight, so there's multimedia for you. And eventually he got his question out. Nice bit of fun that, and of course typifying what we can also do, which is raise awareness for charitable activity. And I have a couple of calls to action. Anyone who never comes to a meeting with me knows that meetings never end without a call to action. This seems a very appropriate forum. Fantastic to be here at the BBC, but we are live on in radio. So it seems a good place then to announce that the community sector will start a new radio show for about our sector, but we're going to do it in such a way as hopefully it'll be interesting to other people as well as they stumble across it. I've often thought it'd be wonderful to have a central information platform for everything that's going on in community radio. So watch out for Community Connect coming to this fine broadcasting service at some point soon. I've also embarked on the Radio Tour 16. I did do Radio Tour 14 and 15, so it's nice and sequential, and that's where I go to community radio stations and ask them all about it, and then we share best practice. And looking around the room here, it's fantastic to see a number of those stations from as far away as Swindon, I think. And yeah, no, it's good. And so if anyone wants me to come along and find out all about what you're doing and all the marvellous things you're doing at your radio station, then let me know. We're particularly interested in any kind of audio that typifies the social agenda as well as the fun that we have in community radio.
Excellent. All right, don't forget you will be able to ask questions in a little while. Now though, the very lovely Jess Rudling. Jess, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about yourself. That's cool.
That's right. So I am currently the editor here at BBC Radio Bristol. I've looked after BBC local stations in Northampton, Oxford and Somerset. And I'll keep it brief. Essentially, we're trying to do everything that Claire's doing, but with a much smaller budget. So because you summed up all of the reasons for it, as you guys did perfectly. But I thought I'd bring an example of something that's actually one of the most recent things we did. This went out yesterday, I think. And it's a really simple example of visualising what's essentially a piece of radio. So you can watch it with your eyes open, you'll see stuff. You can watch it with your eyes shut, and it's just a piece of radio. Just to demonstrate that while the possibilities are endless, actually you can do something that achieves significant reach and engagement that is really straightforward.
I was in the shower and I noticed that the plug was getting a little bit too full of hair too fast, and there was hair down my back and things, and there was hair being left in the towel, and I didn't sort of believe it. I thought maybe I was dreaming or it wasn't a reality. I sort of tried to brush it under the carpet in my mind, and then one day a little bit more came out than normal in my towel when I was drying my hair. And I went and I sat down and I sifted through my hair because I knew it wasn't feeling right. It felt thin and something was wrong. There was no way that this was going to be happening without it starting to show somewhere. So I sifted through both sides of my head, and under the right side I found a patch about the size of my fist. And I just sat there. I remember it now. I was sat there on the end of my bed in my dressing gown, looking in the mirror, thinking, this isn't real. This isn't happening. I couldn't even cry. I was in that much shock. I couldn't even cry.
So that was Imogen, who came in to talk to John Darvel on mid-morning, and she came in and she recorded that at the same time with one of our guys who's working on kind of visualisation and multimedia. And the reason why I like it is, although he's done a really good job, I'm not saying that it's it's desperately simple to it's a skilled job, but it's quite straightforward, it's quite simple, and what I feel is really powerful about that is essentially it's a piece of radio, and that might have reached a couple of tens of thousands when it went on the radio, which is fantastic, but in the time it's gone out digitally, it's reached 500,000. So for me, radio is about characters and people, and obviously music as well, but speech radio is about characters and people and stories. And actually it doesn't matter whether it's on the radio or not, it all reflects well on radio. So, and that's really the area that we're focusing on quite a lot at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jess. Right, Ben Poor, I work with Ben, Creative Technology. How you doing, Ben? You all right?
I'm doing good.
Good, all right. Let's hear from you then. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you brought this afternoon or this evening.
Hi, I'm Ben. I work as part of Global's Creative Technologies team. We kind of rebrand every 6 months, which is a bit like some of our brands. Variously spent the last decade plus trapped in the dungeon of the Bristol office with Paul Andrew pushing plates of Twiglets under the door to keep us fed. Part of a small team. We're kind of focused around many technology areas, but I think the main focus over that time has been us looking at new ways of listening. So it's about pushing the bar down a little bit to get listeners listening to radio without them spending too much effort on things. So we all know there's lots of threats to traditional radio listening. people talk about Spotify and well, podcast. It's not really a threat, is it? But new, different ways of doing things that take people away from actually engaging with their radio device, engaging with radio stations. So really, my remit is to make it easier for the listener, make it more interactive, make it more special for them, but preserving that relationship the radio has with everyone that listens to it. As part of that, really, one of our efforts that we've had over the years is to make mobile apps. I guess everyone's really into mobile apps these days. We've embarked upon the evolution of that, so it's not really a change in the way that mobile apps are being made, but kind of an evolution that fits well in the radio paradigm. So as part of that, we have hopefully a little clip of something called My Capital Extra, which is a way for listeners to stream Capital Extra, one of our stations, over the internet on their mobile phone, iPhones for now, but also to kind of diverge from that if they want to and start personalising their experience a bit more. I think personalising is going to be a big thing in coming years, but we'll have a look at the clip first.
Welcome to My Capital Extra, where you're in control of the music. To get started, go to My Capital Extra in the menu, swipe left while listening to live radio, or hit the skip button on the play bar at the bottom of the screen. Once you're in My Capital Extra, you can see the next 8 songs we've got coming up for you. Not feeling a particular track? Simply swipe left to replace it with another big tune and line up your ultimate version of the Capital Extra playlist. In My Capital Extra, all your favourite DJs will still be bringing you the biggest music, news and gossip, but now it's interactive.
Tony Phillips with you. It is Capital Extra. Nice work picking the tunes. I'm loving what you're doing. You know that track from Tiny Temper and Katie B, KDA? The guys were in talking to Jez Wellham off of Capital Extra in the morning yesterday. So they totally said a really interesting fact about producer KDA. You're going to want to hear it. It's cool. You need to know these kind of things. We need to get to know KDA, especially after we've brought out such a banger like that. So yeah, you can go and check that out. I don't want to spoil it for you. Why not? Just give your screen a tap.
Simply tap the screen when we tell you to, or whenever you see the flashing icon, and you'll get taken straight to the story we're talking about.
And also, like I said, you can get that tune on. We've been talking about it. Get it on. It's an absolute banger.
Capital Extra. If at any time you want to go back to live radio, simply tap the play bar at the bottom of the screen or go to live in the menu. My Capital Extra is available to download now from the Apple App Store. Just search Capital Extra, or if you've got the app already, just get the latest update. It's time for you to take control.
So there we go. She talked a lot about bangers, which I assume is sausages. I'm not quite sure of the lingo there. The important thing is that it's still the live radio experience. You can diverge from that. You can select the track. Sometimes I like to just skip, and just hear all the links in one segment. It sounds like radio. It's got the links. It's got the imaging. It's not just a jukebox service. So it's very close to what people actually like about radio. That kind of experience and that curated experience.
So is it like Tinder? You just swipe what you don't want?
Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, that's probably the idea for it.
All right. Okay, listen, you've heard the lovely panellists. They've all got some massive expertise behind them. If you feel like asking a question now, put your hand. I was going to ask some questions, but I think we're running out a little bit of time, so I'm going to hand it straight to you guys because I'm already in media, so what I ask doesn't probably really matter. Who would like to ask a question, and do you know who you'd like to ask it to? I think you've got the mic, haven't you, there? Oh, come on. There we go. We've got one. Guy with the glasses in front.
Oh, Christ. Here you go, speaking to this. James, Sam FM, when it kind of moved from Jack FM last year, I was there last year, when it kind of all changed over, how do you kind of go about making a new kind of brand for Sam FM?
Take
this one, buddy. I'm going to go
It was a challenge of recreating something that it already existed with a new personality, because essentially what we had to do was change a brand which we didn't own. So we licensed that brand from a company in Canada, and we had to pay money for licensing it, which gave us the ability to use the name and the voice, and that's pretty much it. And so we had to create something new, but essentially keep everything we liked. So the music stayed, the presenter stayed, the name changed, the jokes and silliness all stayed as well. So we had to really just it was about casting a voice and trying to recreate that feel in a different way. And these things sort of evolve as well. So we've recast the voice again recently, and that's changed again. But the personality of the radio station it remained sort of true throughout. It's just trying to take people on a journey. And we could have done it. We could have done it the traditional way, which was when Heart changed from GWR or whatever, the campaign of Heart is coming and whatever, you can do that. We tried doing it the way we would have done it, which was just doing it and not telling anyone, and doing it on April the 1st, and then pretending it was a joke, and then sort of not going back. It was sort of, well, if it was funny for us, it just happened. There's no right or wrong way of doing it, and maybe in hindsight we might have done it a different way. But I think what I like about our brands and our company, we're if you come up with an idea, and this was a big idea to change, we go for it. And sometimes if you want to take creative risks, sometimes it doesn't quite work the first time, so you have to work out what you need to do and then fix it. So that's how it evolved.
Right, does that answer that for you? You're good? Right, anyone else want to ask a question? Anyone want to pick someone's brains here? Okay, the lady again in glasses.
I've got a question for you, Paulina.
Have you?
What are you doing on Tinder?
No, I've got 3 kids and that's what they say. And also George was telling me something about
see.
Hello,
Tell us your name and where you're from.
Yeah, hello, I'm Anna King, based at BBC Radio Gloucestershire, and I present the Mid-Morning Show. Claire, I wanted to ask you, if I may, at the moment, as you rightly pointed out and the other guests have pointed out, more and more radio is about visuals and social media interaction as well. At the moment, certainly the radar figures don't reflect any social media interaction, and there's a lot more effort and time going from traditional radio boards into providing that, but we're not really seeing the radar figures reflect that. Do you think there will be a time sooner rather than later when that will actually happen?
I think it is starting to happen also. I think the thing that we noticed certainly with the programmes we're making, we're starting to look at things like the iTunes charts. And so that clip that we showed, I mean, I know that the History of Ideas got to number 3 in the UK iTunes charts and number 13 in the American iTunes charts. The idea that our programmes are now hitting America, Australia, Canada, Spain, other countries. I mean, we make the food programme here as well, and we find it's really big in Spain, which we don't quite understand. There you go. So I think how these things are measured, I mean, I was involved in a meeting yesterday, and that is something that is becoming more and more important for us. I think it's still very difficult with podcasts to kind of work out the uptake, but we have to go that way. I mean, Radar, as it is, it's always been a very odd system anyway, and I think the data that people can catch now is getting better, so it's inevitable, and I think that's why it's also important for us as well to start to break down who those audiences are likely to be.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, and it's a particular issue for us in local, isn't it? Because we're used to being able to measure ourselves with really definite boundaries, nice clear TSA, you get bums on seats, you can work them into a percentage, but of course you put something out digitally and it can go wherever. But work is being done. It's quite complex to measure, to try to work out what is that pyramid of, or does it matter actually if somebody that's really interested in your Gloucestershire story happens now to live in Kent or Australia? I don't think it matters. I think, if they're interested and we're serving a need, but it's quite difficult for those networks with local stations to work out, how do you work that out when your radar is discrete and everything else isn't. But there is a piece of work going on within the BBC to work out how can you get your geographic figures and your digital figures and sort of overlay a few sets of data to try to nail it down. So it's just quite complicated.
And actually one other thing to mention is longevity. Ronnie Corbett dying, David Bowie dying. I mean, Desert Island Discs, every time somebody dies, their programmes, they get a load of people downloading them, and programmes are constantly regenerating now in a way. So the old days where you made a programme and it went out and that was it, are gone. People are finding those programmes again and again, and that means we've got to start to think differently about what we're making, and it also is what differentiates us from news, because those programmes have got a long tail that they didn't have before.
It nails that old mantra of most people miss most of what you do most of the time, doesn't it? Because actually good content will travel and will live for a lot longer, and there's that lovely moment where you make something and it gets shared digitally and it pops up back in one of your feeds completely via another route, which to me is like seeing somebody reading the book you wrote on the tube, which is never going to happen to me, but it's the closest it gets. And I think it's really interesting that it means actually we can really test the content.
Excellent. Well, I've just got you there, Jess. Is anyone here wanting to get into media? Is anyone here because they're not in it and they'd like to get into it?
No, we've put
George,
them all
you're already in it. Yeah, put them on. Let me ask you then, if someone was to send you a demo, Jess, what is it that you want to hear? What is it that they should, be foremost with?
I think it depends a bit of whether you're sending a presentation demo or you want to be another on-air voice, as a reader or a reporter. I think the thing that sends me back to somebody asking for additional audio for the wrong reasons is typically when it's sort of it's overproduced and you can't actually hear the person. Because the kind of radio that we make is quite free form, it needs to be quite spontaneous and reactive. And yes, I want to hear, an awareness of production values, but I need to hear the person. And if it's so slick that I can't hear the person and I don't know what you're going to be like in reality doing the job, but also, have listens to the station and try and target so that at least it doesn't sound completely alien.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ben, let me just ask you. Bristol seems to be like a real hub technology. Everybody seems to be moving here, a lot of stuff going. Why is it all happening in Bristol? What's special about us here?
Good question, actually. I think it helps to have the 2 universities and numerous other places that people get educated. I recently went to a conference called Vox Bristol. I'm not sure who arranged it, but it was really interesting to see there's lots of cloud computing in Bristol. It's kind of one of the biggest places for cloud computing outside of California, apparently. There's a lot of really active new media, good ideas coming out of Bristol. And it's a real good centre for making these ideas outside of London. I think that Bristol's got a lot to show in terms of new technology, and I think we should make the most of it as a city.
Excellent. Right, any other questions from you guys? Oh God, my newsreader George. How much do you have to drink? Someone get ready to rugby tackle in a moment.
I'd like to ask the Burst people. We're obsessed with Twitter. That's the first thing I open when I come into work. Are we wrong? Are young people still into Twitter? I don't know, because it hasn't like our followers don't seem to grow that much, but we seem to be obsessed with Twitter. Is there somewhere else we should be diverting our attention to?
From a student experience, I would say Facebook is kind of an administrative thing in a way. I would use that like I use my email, in a weird way. And then the more exciting things are like Snapchat, Instagram, and I use Twitter, you just scroll it to see what's going on, but I wouldn't, personally, I think we've been targeting Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook because that's what people look at kind of to see what's going on, whereas Twitter's more kind of, I don't know, I would say a last resort.
Yeah, I feel like with Facebook you can kind of start trends, you can get people talking. Twitter's good for just kind of putting out content and news. That's how I think from a student's perspective would use it. But I mean lots of stuff does happen on Twitter.
And I put it down a bit there, but I obviously Twitter is one of the biggest things in the world right now. But I think, and I think it will go on forever. But I think if you're trying to push out new content, I think the shorter the better. Things like Vine, people are going to watch Vine because it lasts 7 seconds, as silly as it is. Whereas if you're, even though tweets are short, personally, I think it's hard to convey something exciting and new. It's only for things that are already happening to kind of join in a conversation.
Yeah, I think just to push Snapchat, that is what every single student has, and you can go and they update it every month, and you can go onto other news channels now on Snapchat. You can see what other people are doing in the world. I think that's the way forward.
Snapchat's the way forward.
Can you explain Snapchat? What do you do with Snapchat?
Faye is a queen of Snapchat.
That's your last question, George.
Is it you have an account and you follow people and that kind of thing?
So celebrities have Snapchat. You just follow each other and then you post a story, and you can post it as the video is 10 seconds. Yeah. So you have 10 seconds to film something. Then it adds on. You can just film whatever you want. You can add.
And then is it gone forever?
Well, you can. If you send it to someone, it's gone forever unless they screenshot it. But if you put it on your story, it means everyone who follows you can see what you're doing. It's kind of like. It's kind of like posting a photo for 24 hours, and as many people as they can see that photo, and then that's it.
All right. Okay. Anyone else have a question? Come on, guys.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Okay. All right, Paul.
Guys, we're radio guys here, right? So Radio Academy and all that sort of stuff, and 89% of Bristol's population has tuned into a radio station that we run this week, which is fantastic. do we think, has anyone got any evidence that Facebook interaction actually grows listening figures? Because I'd be all over it. If it honestly did, I'd be all over it. And Claire and Ben and James, you know, I know we've worked together, you know, on this and that, but do you actually have any evidence that if you're on Facebook a lot, it grows my listening figures?
It attracts new listeners. I mean, a good example is Radio 4 Facebook, which 3-4 years ago was really...
But if I sign up to Radio 4 Facebook, I'm already a fan of Radio 4,
No,
right?
not necessarily. So things like, because they've been very clever with where they're putting things, so they started off with, they knitted the Archers. So there was a whole knit the Archers thing that really took off.
Oh, we should do that.
And a load of people who didn't necessarily listen to Radio 4 but just kind of thought it was weird, got into it. The woman who's the editor for Radio 4 Interactive is this brilliant woman called Rhiannon Roberts, and she talks about her job is creative sabotage of Radio 4. And so she would deliberately look for things that kind of didn't fit with what people thought they would get with Radio 4. So she finds weird and wonderful things, and that's going into people's feeds, and it is definitely attracting a different audience for us. And I think a lot of people were really sceptical about her arrival and what it was going to mean, and a bit scared. But actually, you know, I think those of us who are here have really seen the difference. And Facebook is the thing that leads it, actually not Twitter. And we use Twitter a lot, and we've got some very clever tweeters. But Facebook does generate a lot of things, and then Instagram, Periscope, Vine, all of those things are starting to, you know, by experimenting with them, you start to see it is actually getting a younger audience and a different audience. It's not going to get the traditional one, but we are seeing a difference.
See, I think it's quite good for content. We'll put something out and then people will answer, then we will think, well, we'll get hold of that person, that's a really good comment, they've got a good story. I think it's quite good along those lines. Right.
Can I just add that I think actually you're asking a question that's impossible to answer, because in order to answer that we'd need to know where we'd be if we hadn't started doing some of that in terms of, you know, genuinely scientific experiment, but that's not. But I think what I look at it a different way, and I say, if somebody had said to us 10 years ago, do you know what, there's a way that for free you could get your brand and an example of what you do to millions of people, it's free, all you've got to do is make the stuff, we would have snapped their hands off. It's really easy for us to be sort of sniffy about it now because it's a distraction, it feels like quite hard work making the move in that direction. Fundamentally, it's radio. I don't care where they hear it. I don't care whether they hear it on the radio or they hear it on a totally different platform. I'm not bothered. It's all people hearing our stuff. So I take your point, and I genuinely admit that it's impossible to answer, but the ship has sailed.
There you go, Paul. Right, anyone else? Yeah, okay.
I'm a stand-up comedian, Keris from Bristol. I'm slowly getting into radio, but I always wonder if this lovely, dulcet West Country accent will hold me back, or is it something that radio stations are now looking for, more regional accents to represent the areas that they're broadcasting from?
Well, I wouldn't look for a job in Manchester, but...
What are you trying to say, my lovely? They'd love me up there.
Yeah, no, gosh, no, honestly, I think... There was a big move probably about 10 or 11 years ago, particularly around telly, where we suddenly started to hear different regional, you know, there was a big thing, you know, we've got to move away from RP, blah, blah, blah. But it's never been an issue in radio, particularly in local radio. That's what we want.
I just wanted to point out, I haven't heard no West Country lovelies in here tonight, so you're all very posh sounding.
Come on.
Does that answer that for you?
We've
all
got
right. Emma, did you want to...
No, I just wanted to
just waving because you've got the accent.
Where did you come from?
That's what we always ask.
Just, I present breakfast here at Bristol, so I'm a West Country girl. But I once took part in a Radio 4 Accent Week, which some people might have said was a little patronising, and I read the news on PM. And 50% of people who got in touch with me said, oh, the ones that knew me, oh, you put your posh voice on. The 50% of people who got in touch with me who didn't know me said, how lovely to hear a West Country accent on Radio 4. So, you know, it's just about being authentic. As long as you're authentic. I'm sure if you're trying to build a brand on local radio, local people want to hear local people, but that's not the be-all and end-all.
Yeah, I think it's become sexier, actually. I think people love the West Country accent. Well, maybe not sexy, but...
I was talking earlier from the community radio perspective about empowering voices less heard on other networks. Lower barriers to entry in community radio. Be proud of your accent, it's fantastic. Get it out on community radio and build your audiences that way. I run a radio station in the part of the country which doesn't speak with my received pronunciation, and I'm thrilled by it. I think we have funny enough, in the Somer Valley region, we actually have two local accents, one with more mining traditions with a bit of Welsh and Yorkshire put in for good measure, and the other with a more traditional West Country rural accent. And we were talking about Bristol earlier. Why is Bristol special? I did read somewhere that Bristol is the only city in the country with a rural accent, which I think just immediately makes it very splendid.
Excellent. James, you wanted to say something?
Just very quickly, I think it's with commercial radio, it's quite often, particularly with sort of imaging and station voices, to go for safe choices. And I think more and more, you know, particularly with brands that aren't so sort of heavily regulated, it's finding a voice that's authentic. So I think people will be attuned more to authentic writing, and they're not being sold to. And you know, it's very easy to be guilty of doing that. But actually, it's that conversational thing, which, you know, anywhere from, you know, Radio 4 continuity announcer with a slightly unusual accent. But actually, I think that's great to hear. You know, but I think other people can do it as well. But it's the authenticity. I think it's whatever your voice is like. I think it's having an engagement with people, and I think that can work. And I think people could try doing that more. And particularly, you know, even in advertising, you know, you don't want to be shouted at. You know, actually, people talking to you, having a conversation is more likely to draw you in.
And just talking about imaging, because that's obviously what you do, how important is imaging? And once you decide you need a radio station with a new image, how do you go about designing? Just look at the demographics? I mean, how does it work?
There's no right or wrong way of doing it. Although, you know, lots of people think they have the right answer. But I think it's engaging in a conversation in terms of you've got to get your personality out there, you know, and some radio stations have a very, very distinct personality, and they're very defined, and they work particularly well. But then some sort of defy that personality in terms of how you sort of define them. So, you know, it's very hard to sort of define what the voice for Six Music should be, because you couldn't put a voice you would traditionally have on commercial radio, because, you know, it's all about being cool and about the music. For us, you know, we had to have it essentially as a personality. People used to think, you know, certainly as Jack, you know, the voice was called Jack, and it was the person. You know, the same for Sam. So it's about knowing who the radio station is talking to, and then trying to work out how you want to communicate it, you know, and it works in different ways for different brands.
Brilliant. Right. Anybody else? Right. Okay, we've got a guy at the back there.
Hey, Sam from the BBC, amongst other things. You guys are all incredibly diverse, and it's really interesting hearing what you guys have got to say. I wonder if